going on? And welcome to today's video where we'll be taking a look at the world of transportation in the Zelda series. We'll be taking a look at the lore in the games. We'll be contrasting that with real-world transportation, and of course a little bit of speculation in there to keep you all thinking. So let's get started. What would we do without transportation? It's the cardiovascular system of our society. It allows us to get from where we are to where we need to be in order to do what needs done, and punctually. Now, this isn't a modern thing. Humans have been using various forms of transportation for over 60,000 years now, which is about the same amount of time between Elder Scrolls release dates. The oldest forms of transportation, of course, being walking, running, and swimming.
Ow. Oh. Ooh. 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 Ow. Ow. Ooh. Ooh. Oh.
Imagine that the year is 8000 BC. Obviously, it's not because I don't have a time machine, but we are in Stoke-on-Trent, which is about as close to 8000 BC as we can get in the modern day. It was about this point in history that people started realizing that, if they need pieces of equipment, a sofa or a dead relative moving, they could outsource that labor to our friends in the animal kingdom. And this brings us on to one of the most rudimentary forms of transportation there is, the horse.
First appearing in Ocarina of Time, horses have helped Link efficiently traverse the land of Hyrule, except in Breath of the Wild, where they're almost completely useless. It's believed that horses were first domesticated over 5,000 years ago in northern Kazakhstan, and Epona, who is probably Link's fondest companion, derives her name from Gallo-Roman religion, a religion that was born when Celtic European, Roman, and Hellenistic beliefs merged. Epona was the goddess of asses. No, for real, a goddess of ass, but not that kind of ass.
Hello, it's me, Yoshi.
That's the one. Seen as the protector of horses, it's a fitting name for a friend. Epona also received one of the more recognisable character themes in the series that has since seen a handful of renditions. It's believed that humans first built rudimentary rafts somewhere between 50,000 and 65,000 years ago in order to cross waters in what is now known as the Australian continent. When I mention rafts in Zelda games, a lot of you probably imagine the journey to Eventide Island, but rafts have been present in the Zelda series, much like in the real world, for much longer than domesticated horses. First appearing in the earliest entry, found inside the third dungeon known as the Manji, and can be used at docks to cross bodies of water and is needed to reach the fourth dungeon. The raft appears once again in Zelda 2 and, like Zelda 1, can also be found within the game's third dungeon and is required to reach the eastern continent. Although not a necessary endeavour, there is a raft minigame in Link's Awakening where Link can acquire 2 pieces of heart, one from the right section of the rapids and another for completing the minigame in under 40 seconds. In Oracle of Ages, Link visits a raft builder named Rafton, because of course that's his name, and once you've given him the required materials, he will build you a raft which you can use to sail to Crescent Isle. The raft then disappears from the Zelda series entirely, not to return for another 16 years, where it then appeared as one of the many nods to the original game that can be found within Breath of the Wild. Although humans used rafts 60,000 years ago, sailboats wouldn't be used until about 6,000 years ago, and thought to have originated from Egypt. Though quote-unquote boats appeared in the Zelda series before 2002, it wouldn't be until the release of Wind Waker that Link would utilise the power of the wind in order to reach lands previously inaccessible. Following canon, the next entry in the timeline, Phantom Hourglass, sees Link upgrade his boat quite significantly, jumping from 4000 BC technology forward almost to the present day with the turn of the 18th century and the creation of steamboats. The SS Lineback, with its flanking paddles and chimney, lends heavily from steam-driven designs. Though, unlike steamboats of this era, the SS Lineback is also outfitted with a cannon, which was not commonplace on board the real-world ships, as their main function was transporting the general populace. And we're staying with 1800 steam power, but much like our Paleozoic ancestors, we're moving from the water to the land, and we're applying the same principle, but this time we've got some train tracks. Now, trains are among some of the most efficient forms of transport that there are. That is, unless you happen to live in the UK, where it'll cost you about £30 to be late for something. I'm looking at you, London North Western Railway. Not only are you as punctual as an actual dead person, you make buses look like a hygienic alternative. I'm getting just a little bit off topic here, sorry. Although Britain may have one of the most expensive and least efficient railways in the entire world, the steam locomotive was first built in this country. In 1804, Cornish inventor Richard Trevithick used high-pressure steam to drive a locomotive. However, his designs were too heavy to be used on the tracks available at that time, and a commercially viable alternative wouldn't arrive for another 8 years in the form of the Salamanca, which successfully solved the weight issue and used superheated water in order to move pistons that drove the wheels. And after a century of innovating upon the steam drivetrain, in 1938 one of the most famous steam locomotives of all time reached a speed of 126 miles per hour, which for the time is an incredible feat of engineering and is a speed that no UK commuter train currently in service travels faster than. Almost a century on, and with the introduction of electric trains, and we're still not moving any faster. As someone from the home of steam trains, this is utterly disappointing. Our trains are goofier than our teeth. Link doesn't have the same worries, however. He can take advantage of the leisurely pace and the power of steam locomotion in order to traverse the lands of New Hyrule. This formerly form of public transportation also sees the addition of a cannon, because, of course, this is a Zelda game after all.
Now, I'm sure you're all aware of the 1903 flight made by Wilbur and Orville, more famously known as the Wright brothers, and although the flight only lasted about 12 seconds, it would go on to revolutionise travel, and in the case of aircraft like the Spitfire, combat, and the human race as a whole, slashing travel times.
Now, we are yet to see Link utilise powered flight in order to traverse his surroundings, with the exception of some contraptions teased to be possible in Tears of the Kingdom, but we're yet to see a powered fixed-wing aircraft or technical equivalent of, but we do have a biological equivalent. This, of course, being the loft wings present in Skyward Sword. The inhabitants of Skyloft use loft wings in order to travel and also to protect themselves. Should you fall off the side of the Sky Island, there is a rather handy service available who will catch you and then drop you back on land and then begin to lecture you about the dangers of falling tens of thousands of feet to your death. Like, dude, chill out. Have you never heard of fall damage cancellation? Though there are no birds physically capable of carrying humans during flight, the Loftwings have still taken inspiration from real-world birds, the most obvious being one of the more unusual avian specimens, the shoebill stork. An incredibly unusual and at times rather intimidating looking bird that is easily distinguishable by its large beak and stork-like form, hence the name, and these are the same features that can be found in the Loftwings of Skyloft. The main difference, of course, being the colour and the size, the Zelda equivalent standing about twice the height and wingspan of the real-world counterparts.
Moving on from fixed-wing aircraft and onto rotor airfoils, or what you might more commonly know as a helicopter. Now, you might be saying, Johnny, you can tell me a lot of things, but you certainly can't tell me that there are helicopters in the world of Zelda. And no, where there might not be any Black Hawks or Apache gunships, in theory, technically, there is.
The definition of a helicopter is as follows: a type of aircraft which derives both lift and propulsion from one or more sets of horizontally revolving overhead rotors. It is capable of moving vertically and horizontally, the direction of motion being controlled by the pitch and blades. And as some of you may have cottoned on, this definition applies very much to Beedle's airshop, found once again in Skyward Sword. He can be found floating above and around the bazaar situated upon Skyloft in his human-powered helicopter hut aptly named Beedle's airshop. Get it? It's an airship, airshop. It's clever stuff, people. Taking inspiration from both Da Vinci's original designs of a man-powered aerial screw, slightly more modern wing designs, and then sprinkle in a little bit of Mr. Fredrickson, and boom, you've got my personal favourite iteration of Beedle's store. Now, I don't know if you can keep the store airborne through, I don't know, clever use of gears or just sheer leg power, or both, but any way you slice it, it's an impressive achievement.
And we couldn't discuss the world of transportation without mentioning one of the most left-field forms of transport available to Link, or more specifically, the hero of the wild, and we are, of course, talking about the Master Cycle Zero.
I remember watching the Game Awards back in 2017 when the Master Cycle was first revealed along with the Champions Ballad DLC, and being more shocked about that than the fact that Nintendo was now starting to make DLC for their games. A piece of Sheikah technology almost identical in design to real-world motocross bikes, the main differences being, of course, that the Master Cycle resembles a horse, but it also has quirks like horizontal suspension as opposed to the real-world vertical forks. It can also be fueled using any organic matter found within Hyrule. Shout out to the progressive Sheikah for inventing biofuel bikes. I also love the idea of shriveled little Sheikah monks tearing about on dirt bikes.
Oh my god, he on X Games mode.
Going back to forms of transport we saw teased in the Tears of the Kingdom trailer, we also saw some sort of hot air balloon, a very unusual form of transport that essentially scaled up the concept behind Chinese lanterns, and the first manned balloon flight was made back in 1783, which is actually much longer ago than I expected. Used these days primarily as a means to sightsee rather than to actually travel, as they're not the easiest things to steer, nor are they particularly fast, travelling at an average speed of about 10 miles an hour, meaning you could easily outrun one on foot. But as we've seen in the trailer, contraptions like hot air balloons could prove useful to Link, serving as a means to ascend to the Sky Islands above.
And of course, we can't forget about the car.
Raindrops, drop top.
I don't know what's more ridiculous, the fact that Link now has a car, or this thing. You Americans and your funny little ways. This thing is is ginormous. I'm pretty sure they wrote about these things in Moby Dick.
Devoid of a traditional combustion engine, the vehicle we see in the teaser closely resembles the more simplistic drivetrain of an electronic vehicle, that being some form of battery powering motors that drive the wheels. But where traditional EVs have motors built into the chassis, whatever is driving this vehicle's wheels must be contained within the wheels themselves, which is actually more similar in concept to hub drive e-bikes.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video, or indeed learnt a thing or two, but until the next time, make sure you take care of yourselves, and remember, Zelda good. Like and subscribe.